Welcome everybody to episode 32 of the Canberra Football Show. My name's Matt Nicoletti. Michael's sick this week, but we do have Steve Forshaw back with us. Steve, thank you very much for joining me today. And how's it going?
Really good. Thanks for having me again, Matt. It's been a little while. Perhaps people won't be sick of my voice now.
And I guess first of all, happy birthday for last week. And you spent your birthday night up on the scaffold at Deakin Stadium watching the FFA Cup qualifying final with Russ. Give us your quick thoughts on that match before we get into the games this week.
Thank you for the birthday comments, but I thought the cup final probably went the way we expected it to. The first half was really, really entertaining. It was a good open game, and I thought when Monaro scored their goal to make it 2-1, they'd got themselves back into the game, and we were going to have something similar in the second half, a real ding-dong battle. But the penalty just before half-time sort of took the wind out of their sails, and the second half just became a little bit of a procession for Tigers, who proved too strong and were worthy winners.
And, of course, they will represent Canberra in the round of 32, and I saw there's a few more teams that are starting to add to that list, but there's still a long way to go in that, so I don't think we'll have that draw for a while, but Tigers will definitely be waiting to see who they get next. Let's get straight into NPL 1, shall we? First match of the round. In round 9, we had Monaro Panthers 3, West Canberra Wanderers 1, Wilson, Danning, and Bassa Silk with the goals for Monaro Panthers, and Cole with the goal for West Canberra Wanderers. Great bounce back victory here for Monaro after their defeat, like you mentioned, in the FFA Cup qualifying final to Tigers. Constantly put pressure on West Canberra. They probably had the best opportunities of the matchup. Good to see their new signing as well, James Wilson, getting on the score sheet right away. So he's made quite an impact already on the Monaro squad. West Canberra, though, will be disappointed that they were not able to follow up last round's victory where they went on top of the ladder. So they'll be looking to bounce back straight away next week. What were your thoughts on this one, Steve?
Before the game started, you'd have been hard pressed to pick the winner of it.
Yep.
Although Monaro's league form has turned a corner a little bit. I mean, they were obviously disappointed to lose the cup final. That have been looking forward to that round of 32 draw. But I thought that they came out all guns blazing. They started the game really well. 3-1 in the end of the day didn't flatter them. I thought they were the better team all round. The goal that they scored, I mean, it's been given to Cole, but I think from what I saw, it really probably was an own goal by Bassa Silk. So he'd have been pleased to get the third to sort of right the wrongs, so to speak. A good game. A decent result for Monaro, keeps them in touch with the top 4 now, puts them just outside, and puts the pressure on those teams that are in that 4th, 5th, 6th spot. So worthy winners, good bounce back, some good performances, particularly when you consider that they were missing the likes of Bobolus and Dominici for different reasons. But I thought the side that Frank Casey was able to put on the park looked as well balanced as any of the Monaro teams we've seen this year, and I thought they played very well.
My question to you about Monaro before we move on to West Canberra is Bassa Silk. He didn't start the final. He came on and he scored a cracking goal, didn't he, in that FA Cup qualifying final, and he scored again here today. He scored some really good goals throughout the season. He's been a pivotal part of their midfield. The reason why I wanted to ask you about him is because he's been one of the midfielders no one's really talked about too much. Everyone's talked about, obviously, Habtemariam, Dominici, McLaughlin, Calabria, but no one's really talked about the likes of Bassa Silk, and I've talked about here on the show plenty of times about Bassa Silk and Ross Barkin, but those two I wanted to ask you about specifically because they've been arguably two of the most key players in terms of Monaro having this resurgence from the start of the season.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Bassa Silk has probably got lost in the mix a little bit with the sort of names that came into the Monaro team this year following Frank Casey in. So he's probably just flown under the radar a little bit, and he hasn't really been able to establish himself as a regular first 11 starter. But his influence off the bench is there for all to see. The goal he scored against Tigers in the cup final was a gem, as you said. I think he's doing really well. And, he must be now very close to cementing a regular start because, as you say, he's getting them points. He's actually providing assists. He's scoring goals. His work rate has never been in doubt. He can be a little inconsistent, but I think probably now, over the last few weeks, he's made himself almost indispensable. And as for Rosebacken, he's sort of been converted by Frank Cation from a right back into a sort of holding midfielder, and he's been their most consistent performer. And I thought, certainly for the first hour in the cup final, was the best player on the park. So, in those two, they've got some quality, and they can just build around that and keep the momentum going. Then there's no reason why they can't threaten the top four.
And before we move on to the next match, your thoughts on West Canberra Wanderers? With this loss, they go to second place, 2 points behind Canberra Croatia, I think, and they could drop the third depending if Tigers FC get the victory in their match against Gungahlin. If they don't, then they'll stay second. So they were top before this, and West Canberra Wanderers seem to have a tendency of bouncing back immediately, and Ulysses seems to find out what went wrong immediately. So what do you expect from West Canberra going forward after this defeat?
Look, exactly that. I mean, they're not the sort of team that has put a run of losses together. They haven't gone back losses on a regular basis this season. In fact, they've been, I think, probably the surprise package for many. They've done so well. And I think that, and I might have mentioned this last time I was speaking to you, that you can no longer look at Western Canberra. Yeah, you can't say that they're the 3-point banker when you play them anymore. You know that you're going to have a game, no matter what sort of form they might have been in the game before. So I don't think we can write them off at any stage now. And I think Yoogali De Silva will be really disappointed that they didn't get something out of the game, because they had done so well against Gungahlin in the last game. So he'll be looking for a little bit more consistency as the season progresses. But I think anybody playing them will know that they've got to bring their A game if they're going to get something out of it. They're a good side, a very good side.
They certainly are. And the next matchup we have is Belconnen United 0, Canberra Olympic 1, Ihegi with the goal in the 50th minute. There wasn't a lot in this matchup between them. It was a pretty close matchup. It was a very big win for Olympic, though, like we're going to mention, as they climb up to 5th place and now only 1 point off Belconnen, actually, in the top 4 with 11 points. Interesting stat. This is actually their first victory since round 2, where they beat Belconnen. So there you go. So that's that's a little coincidental there. But overall, very important victory for them. They're back in the hunt now. But Belconnen United, on the other hand, they'll feel like they should have got something out of the match. Michael Menza had a shot that was brilliantly saved by Christus, and Michael Piccolo as well had an effort from just outside the box, hitting the side post. So, and also Belconnen yet to pick up a victory in 4 rounds after their great victory over Canberra Croatia 2-1. So there wasn't much in this one, Steve. What do you think about it?
Well, it's probably a game that Belconnen will look back on and think they should have at least got something out of it. The chances they created in the first half, they should have at least registered, but they didn't. Christus made a couple of great saves. Piccolo, as you mentioned, hit the post, but he also had another chance from a rebound that he put over the bar, and he probably should have done a little bit better than that. Mensa had chances. And I think it was mentioned in the Bar TV commentary that if you don't take your chances, then it can come back and haunt you. And that's exactly what happened. You got an opportunity that fell to Ihegi, who was the calmest player on the park when it fell to him. He just took a touch, rolled it in the bottom corner, and that was enough to get Olympic across the line. But I think Belconnen, I'll be a little disappointed that they didn't get something out of it. From Robbie Katanak's point of view, he will be absolutely delighted because, as you say, puts them back in touch with the top 4, gives them that win that they've been searching for over the last few weeks. And once again, the competition is just showing just how close it is. There's not much between any of the teams. It's a very, very cutthroat competition. Makes it really interesting for the neutral spectator.
It certainly does. Moving on to the next matchup, we've got a match that you were at with Russ on the new scaffold there out at Canberra 201. We had Canberra Croatia 1, Tuggeranong United 0, Barrett with the goal in the 48th minute. Canberra Croatia probably created more of the clear-cut chances with Barrett taking that one, but there was also a really good shot I saw from Kishta as well that was brilliantly saved. But Russ said last week that Canberra Croatia haven't won at Canberra in quite a few years, so this is a statistic that won't be extended in Russ's books anymore, to say the least, from Canberra Croatia. But Tuggeranong still created some good chances though, and I saw you mention there was like a shot, guy had a shot early on and could have scored early on, and this of course breaks their record of 6 draws in a row, but it's not the record that the way Mitch Stevens would have liked it to be broken. Still yet to register their first victory. There was a lot to unpack in this one, Steve. What do you think about it?
It was a game that was a little bit scrappy. You know, the surface at Canberra 2 is not renowned for being Canberra's version of Wembley, and it was a little bit bumpy. And it affected the way both teams approached the game. There's no doubt in my mind that Canberra Croatia went there with a particular game plan and had to change that during the game because of the state of the pitch. Having said that, I thought Tuggeranong really put it to them. Certainly in the first half, there was chances in the first sort of 5 or 10 minutes both ways. Mark O'Gaya would be a little disappointed that he didn't score when he took advantage of a stumble by Sam Brown and sort of poked it towards goal but didn't put enough on it. And then Jason Yoogali similarly had a great chance and just rolled it wide of the post when he was put through. So, you know, in the early stages, it could have been 1-0, 1-1, 2-1, 2-2 sort of thing. But a moment of real quality sealed this for Canberra Croatia. It was a sort of poor attempt at a pass from, and I can't remember who it was at the time, that tried to play a one-time ball from a clearance from Canberra Croatia, and the Tuggeranong player played it straight to Kalfas. Kalfas, when he took possession of it, dropped his shoulder, went past his fullback and put in a cross that Daniel Barrett attacked with all the sort of purpose that you expect from Daniel Barrett and nodded the ball into the bottom left-hand corner. It was a moment of real quality in a game that was probably lacking a little bit of that. But in the end, there is no doubt Canberra Croatia deserved the win. From a Tuggeranong point of view, again, they've been competitive. Again, they've done enough between the two penalty areas to sort of look like they might get something out of it, but have come up short. And, you know, they're rapidly running out of time to sort of bring themselves out of that relegation spot. So they played with 2 6s yesterday, and I thought that worked well for them. Walsh and Connor Nolan played in the holding position. I thought that worked really well. I thought the 2 inexperienced central defenders that played for Tuggeranong were very, very good. They're just lacking that spark up front. They just cannot get the ball into the back of the net. And, you know, 6 draws shows that they can be competitive, but they've got to start picking up 3-pointers.
And I think Russ said as well, they lost before, I think it was before this weekend, they lost less matches than Canberra Croatia, even though Canberra Croatia were in the top 4. So, but I'm looking at the ladder now, and I know Gungahlin still have a match to play in hand, but they're 3 points off Gungahlin, and they're 4 points off Monaro, and then 5 points off Olympic in 5th place. So we've been saying this for a couple of weeks, but I don't think it's all doom and gloom for Tuggeranong yet, because if they string 1 or 2 wins together, they're right back into it, like we mentioned with Canberra Olympic, who before this weekend, if they got another loss, then people might have been questioning that, but now they're back in it. So what do you think they'll need to do to get a victory?
Look, they've got to break this trend of not picking up wins. I mean, that's 7 games in a row now where they haven't got a win, but they picked up 6 points.
So yeah, it's still there.
You know, so they're there or thereabouts. They're not far off. They're really lacking somebody that'll give them that double figures, 10, 12, 13, 14 goals a season. They create chances, but they're just not being able to put them away. And against quality opposition, if you're struggling to score goals, you concede one, and then it means you've got to score two to win. And when you're already struggling, that becomes a mountain. They're not in a position yet where they need to panic. As you suggest, they're still close enough to those teams that are above them that they can actually catch them. But the trend is not looking good for them at the moment. And they've got to sort of shake off those sort of shackles and get themselves 3 points. I mean, in the window, maybe they'll start looking around for somebody that might be able to come in and score them a few goals. Or they may just persevere with what they've got, because there's some quality in the squad. And I guess it's just getting that magical mix correct.
And yeah, there's quite a bit of time for clubs still to get players in the window. I think they have till the end of the month. The last matchup didn't take place. Tigers FC and Gungahlin United. This was postponed due to pitch issues at Nijong. And I'm assuming it'll most likely be played in a midweek fixture at the AIS, like all midweek fixtures are. Next up, we got the preview. So let's start in round 10. So let's start with West Canberra Wanderers, Canberra, Croatia, Saturday, June 19th, 1:15 at Melrose Synthetic. Michael's going with Croatia on this one. This is going to be a very tough one. I'm going to go with Croatia. They've been on a bit of that role now. They were going through a bit of an inconsistent period, but they did get the big victory over Tigers before the FFA Cup, and I thought that was very important for them. And you saw them, and that really helped them come into a match like this against Tuggeranong, which could have been a potential banana skin for them. West Canberra are going to be looking to bounce back, and like you mentioned, I don't think they have gotten back-to-back losses so far this season. I think it might happen for them here, but I don't think that'll be the end of the road at all for West Canberra. But I'm going to go with a Canberra-Croatia victory here. It's going to be very close. This is going to be a very intriguing matchup.
It is, because I don't think Canberra-Croatia fancy playing on the synthetic for a start. And as you mentioned, their opponents this weekend don't go back-to-back with defeats.
Yeah.
So it is a difficult one for Canberra-Croatia. It's one of those places, a bit like Canberra, that you're pleased to get in and get away from with 3 points. And if they can do that and consolidate their position at the top of the table, they'll be more than pleased. I think they will. I think they're good enough to do it. You've got the added incentive that not this weekend, but the weekend after, maybe Thomas James is available to the Canberra-Croatia squad, and that puts pressure on. Yeah. So it puts pressure on the lads that are in his spot, or the spot that he might occupy, to keep performing, to keep him out, and that doesn't do Woden any favours. But I think Canberra-Croatia too strong, but in a close one.
And next up, we have Monaro Panthers, Belconnen United, Saturday, June 19th, 5:30 p.m. from Riverside Stadium. Michael's going with Monaro for this one. I'm going to agree with Monaro here. Belconnen they've been creating a lot of chances, like you mentioned, but they haven't been able to take their chances. And I think this will be another close one. I'm going to go with Monaro. I think they're starting to get some momentum now, despite not getting that win in the FFA Cup. They did show that the quality that they have. Seems like James Wilson's picking it up. Bassasilk scoring the goals. Kalari has just been outstanding for them. And of course, we've mentioned Ross Barkin as well, pivotal in midfield. I think they're really starting to get some momentum now. And I'm going to go with a Monaro Panthers win, but this could easily be one that ends up as a draw. But like you mentioned, Belco just need to start taking their chances.
Yeah. I think, in Belconnen's favour is the return, I think, of Isaac Clements from suspension.
Yeah.
Which he makes a big difference to their back four. I don't think Phil Brigeau played on the weekend either. So if he's available, then they've got, defenders in depth that can actually help keep them solid at the back. But it's at the other end of the park, as you quite rightly suggest, that they're having problems at the moment. Haven't won since they beat Canberra-Croatia. They haven't lost many, but they haven't won. And a bit like we were talking about with Tuggeranong, they need to convert those close games into wins. Monaro, I think, have only been beaten by Tigers. And on a couple of occasions, they played them, once in the league and once in the cup. Over the last 4 or 5 weeks, they are building some momentum. They're starting to click as a unit. And I think that they will win this, I think, reasonably comfortably.
All right, next up, we've got Tuggeranong United against Tigers FC, Sunday, June 20th, 3 p.m. at Canberra 201. Actually, before we get into this one, I believe Russ told me that he'll be doing back-to-back on Saturday, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll see what he says in his Facebook post, but he might be doing both those Saturday matches. So there's a bit of a gap in between. So that works out well for him. So we've got, like I mentioned, that match there. Michael's going with Tigers for this one. I'm going to agree. Tuggeranong United, we mentioned how it's not all doom and gloom for them since they are still playing well, but Tigers, I think, are just going to, that is the ultimate momentum boost, making the FFA Cup. As you would know, you've been there and done that in that competition. It's the highest platform you can get to in this country from an NPL side. So I just think they're going to have this momentum going at the moment. That's not going to be unstoppable, but it's going to take something to get past them. And the amount of depth they have, and I wouldn't be surprised if Tigers end up getting another player or two in the transfer window, because they've already got a lot of depth and a lot of quality at the moment. So what do you think about this one, Steve?
Yeah, I think you're right. If it doesn't become a distraction, if the FFA Cup doesn't become a distraction, and it can, then there is no reason why they shouldn't continue the sort of form that they've shown this far. Excuse me. The other thing in their favour is that going to Canberra too won't be that much of a change from playing at Nigel. So they're sort of used to playing on those sort of surfaces, and they're coming up against a Tuggeranong side that is really struggling to win games. So you'd have to favour Tigers to win this. I hope Tuggeranong can get something out of it for the sake of the competition. I don't want to see a team sort of cut loose at the bottom and that relegation battle being sorted out quickly. And it's not yet. I'm not suggesting that for 1 minute. It's certainly not doom and gloom, to use your description. But Tigers will bring players in from what the Canberra scuttlebutt is already running wild in terms of who might be and who might not be going to Tigers and others. But I think they'll be too strong for Tuggeranong at Canberra. And I would see this in a high-scoring match. I think they'll run out quite comfortable winners.
You make a good point about the pitch, but I don't think they've played at Nigel too much this season. I think they've only played Canberra, Croatia, and Monaro there, but the majority of the side definitely have played there quite a bit. Last up in round 10, we have Gungahlin United against Canberra Olympic, Sunday, June 20th, 3:15 p.m. at AIS Grassfield 2. Michael's going with the Gungahlin one for this one. I don't think there's going to be a lot between these sides. I'm going to go for a draw here. Olympia have gotten themselves some good momentum. Gungahlin end up having 2 weeks off, unintentionally. Of course, there's the week off that everyone had if you weren't in the final, and then their match was postponed. So, unintentionally 2 weeks off. Let's see if this helps them or hinders them in that regard. I'm going to go with a draw on this one. Gungahlin need to start picking up a win or two as well. But Olympic gotten themselves some good momentum, and I think Gungahlin are going to have a few signings. I'm not sure if they're going to be playing in the next match, but we'll wait and see.
Yeah, look, this is probably, I'm going to say this is the hardest one to pick. It's been proved impossible to pick them all season. But I'm going to go against you both. I'm going to stick with Olympic in this. I think Olympic might get away with this one. They're well organised. They're very, very strong in terms of their team spirit. They work hard for each other, play for each other. In Ahegi, they've got a proven goal scorer, and on his day can tear teams apart. And even when he's quiet, he can come up with the winning goal like he did against Belconnen. So I'm just going to plump for, in a close one, Olympic.
And that's us for NPL 1. Steve, before we let you go, do you know what matches you're going to be doing this weekend?
I'm doing the Monaro Belconnen game. Russ is doing the 2 on Saturday.
Yep.
But I'm joining him for the second one, the evening game, Monaro Belconnen. Then I'm joining him again at the AIS for Gungahlin Olympic, where I'll be able to see firsthand whether my predictions are correct.
Awesome. Thank you very much for joining me, Steve, and I look forward to having you back on the show soon. Thank you.
Anytime, Matt. Thanks, mate. Bye-bye.
We're here for NPLW, and Matty Moore is back on the show. Matty, great to have you back on, mate. How you been?
Yeah, cheers, mate. Good to be back. Look, I've been well, mate, and like the rest of the world, probably really excited about the amount of football that's going on at the moment, and also terrified about the amount of sleep I'm going to lose in the next, 4 weeks or so. But no, I'm good. Family's good, and football's exciting as always. So yeah, happy to be here. Thanks, Matt.
Let's start with the first match we have. Sort of a replica of the final, not just in terms of the match, but also the scoreline. Canberra Croatia 4, West Canberra Wanderers 1. Berkeley with a goal. Grace Gill with 2 goals. One of them was a penalty, and Jones with the other goal. Like I said, replay from the final last week. It was another big victory for Canberra Croatia, and in terms of league form, it was technically a bounce back for them because they did lose to CUA the previous round, and they did score quite a few goals. And for me, the pick of the bunch was Grace Gill's first goal, just on the edge of the box. Beautiful strike that was. Let's not forget West Canberra, though, still missing Tiana Jaber. She's still going to be out for, I think, one more match at the very least. And then Sarah Whitfield wasn't there either. So you go from not having Jaber to not having Whitfield as well. That's not going to help the West Canberra defense. And they also got a red card, I think, which is what led to the red card. Which is what led to the penalty. So what are your thoughts on this one, Matty? And actually, before we get into it, did you see that what Hannah Koppel got the red card for?
No, I missed the red card bit. I think I was looking away.
So she knew exactly what she was doing, because what happened was they were in the goal. She was standing on the line and she went like this to stop the ball. Right. And immediately, as soon as the ref whistle blew it, she started walking. She knew exactly. She knew exactly what she did wrong. But it was weird because it was one of the most blatant ones. But she knew immediately what she was like. Like she wasn't trying to be like, "Oh no, I didn't do that." It was very clear from the camera as well. So I found that interesting. I haven't seen one of that. I've definitely seen it before, but I haven't seen it in a while. But what do you think about this matchup?
The last handball like that I remember was like Suarez in a couple of World Cups ago. But yeah, saw the majority of the rest of the match, and you're right about Whitfield and J-Bar. I mean, we saw the loss that J-Bar had in the Fed Cup final, and they're sort of 2 key pieces that you don't really want missing when you're playing the top of the table guys. And Canberra Croatia again just continue to show that that their depths there, and I think that's probably one of the pleasing things for Nick Brosnich is, although we were seeing some familiar faces in Gill and Jones is becoming a regular off the bench in terms of popping the ball in the back of the net. The reliance that we probably saw on Grace Gill and Britt Palombi last year isn't quite as much, and the fact that they can produce a result like that with, what we would say is probably I guess a less effective sort of front line that, and that's only because we have such high expectations of that Canberra Croatia front line and the damage that they can do. They'll be pretty happy with that. They're probably still annoyed that they've conceded a goal, but the signs are positive, and they would have seen that as a really good opportunity, not knowing what was going to happen in the CUA Belconnen game as well, to try and make sure that they they would have been hoping to get a bit of a gap there. But West Canberra is a bit of an interesting one. So they've had this great run in the Federation Cup now, and the back-to-back 4-1 losses for lack of a better term, it starts to become a bit of a turning point for them, and the next 2 to 3 weeks really will tell us how their season's going to shape out. I remember when I was on here with you and Michael a couple of weeks ago, and I sort of said if they don't make top 4, they're probably a little bit disappointed, and I still think that's the case. But given some of the other results over the weekend, it's getting that much harder, and they're going to really need to start jamming home and taking advantage of games against the likes of a Canberra Olympic and a Gungahlin to really start to bridge that gap, because I think they're sitting 6 at the moment, but still really positive signs. I mean, they're far more advanced from a football point of view than I thought they'd be. At sort of halfway through the season, you can see some really well developed patterns of play there, but it's just one of those days where if you're missing 2 key players, against Canberra Croatia, that's a big ask straight away. And you take the send off, and the quality of Grace Gill around the edge of that 18-yard box, as you mentioned earlier, Matt. I mean, we've seen her do it for what it feels like 1,000 years, and you're supposed to get slower and a little bit worse as you get older. I know I certainly did. I think I hit 25 and went downhill, and Grace seems to still be accelerating and dominating play. And that's a key factor for Canberra, Croatia. You know, your Talis person, you know, she's the heart and soul of that club, and she's still producing for them, which is vital.
She certainly is. And I just wanted to bring up the ladder quickly, because you mentioned they're in 6th place. They're only 2 points off Gungahlin, but remember, Gungahlin aren't 4th. So Olympic are 4th, and they have 16 points now. So there's a 6-point gap there. Granted, if Woden-Weston could get it says Woden-Weston on this ladder, but if West Canberra Wanderers can get something this weekend, and if they hope that Olympic, you know, don't get a victory or a draw, then they're one step closer, same as Gungahlin United in that regard. But that just proves how competitive it is when you've got Woden-Weston, Gungahlin, Canberra Olympic, Canberra United Academy, all within that 7-point range. And then there's a 5-point gap between Canberra, Croatia, and Belconnen, Matty. So we got a bit of a race going on, and we mentioned it before, but now it's really starting to spice up. My question to you is, before we move on to the next match, is Renee Juno recently has been lighting it up as a fullback of late, and she's been starting quite a few matches and doing really well. She did really well in that Fed Cup final, especially, I thought. So what do you make of her progression, just slotting into that fullback role over the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, she's been really brilliant. She's been a really valuable addition. And I remember watching round 1 where Juna didn't play, and Jeremy and I were out there, and I think they had Cecilia Matic playing on the right hand side of defence, and Jeremy and I thought at the time, I shouldn't speak for Jeremy in case he doesn't agree. I thought at the time that was going to be a real problem spot for them. That was the weak point, sort of looking at that. If I was a Belconnen or a CUA, and CUA in that round 1 game had a lot of success down there. And what you've seen now is Juna, who's probably a little bit unknown to a lot of people in the women's game, because she spent so long in the boys' side of things, and the physicality and the speed of which she plays with, the sort of 2-touch tempo and the ability to see the ball and you know, pick her moments to go forward. But her composure has been vital, and I think she's probably been a little bit of the missing link in that back four. You know, we know we've got Churchill on one side, but with Juna on the other, she's actually been quite clutch. And the thing for that is that whoever's playing on that right hand side in front of her now has got a huge amount of confidence that they don't have to worry about. It's normally Fogarty. She doesn't have to stress too much about helping Juna out, and a little bit like on the other side with Churchill behind Palombi, so they can afford to neglect their defensive responsibilities a little bit. But it's also her ball playing skills as well. Like this is a girl who's played in, you know, ACT rep teams as a central midfielder as well, so she knows how to read the play and break it up. And she's probably been one of the key additions, I think, for Canberra, Croatia this year. You know, Fogarty's come in and done well. We know Jenny Bissett's come back, but you know, the old adage goes, you know, strikers win your games, defense wins your championships, and Juna's really solidified that in an area that I thought might have been a bit of a problem after round 1, and I can't give her enough credit.
And moving on to the next match, we've got Wagga City Wanderers 3-0 victory over Tuggeranong United, Castle and Grower Compost with 2. Good victory for Wagga here. This is their second win of the season. Their other win in the season came against Tuggeranong United in this position as well. From the goals that I saw, it seemed like they figured out the weakness of the keeper on the day, which was sort of balls just under the crossbar. And that third goal from Grower Compost, what a strike that was. I mean, to be fair to the keeper, there's no way that definitely wasn't a weakness of hers. Like, there's no way a lot of keepers weren't going to get to that. The speed and the accuracy and the strength on that second one from Campos was absolutely fantastic. A hard trip for Tuggies. It always is a hard trip to go to Wagga. They're still in search for their first win, and we mentioned I think when you came on the show last was when Paulo Romero was first announced, but he didn't coach that week, so he hasn't had too long with the squad. He hasn't had too many matches to sort of figure out what he wants to do with his team in terms of what system will work best for them. So what did you make of this matchup? And yeah, we'll just start with that.
Yeah, I think, like, you know, full credit to Wagga. I mean, they would have probably highlighted the Tuggeranong game given what they'd done before. And this is an improved Tuggeranong outfit as well. And you're right about that second goal. I don't care who's between the sticks. Good luck to you getting on the end of that one. And I know that Wagga's got some injury concerns as well. Like, they've recently put out a post asking for, more players, due to long-term injuries and things like that. So, all those, to do that. And then in the same week, Sam being able to really combine the team and get those patterns of play sorted and drive home and get a 3-0 victory would be really, really important for them. And they were good value a few weeks ago against Belconnen as well. Like, they really dug in and saw it out. And against a team like Tuggeranong United, who, seen play, really stretch Belconnen United as well as Canberra Olympic for large stretches of games. And they're a team that'll probably get better in the second half of the season. They would be really pleased with, well, obviously with the 3 points, but also how they went about it. Not conceding. They conceded the last time. I think Zoe Terry got a goal against them last time, but they seemed a lot more compact and really organised, and they really took away the speed threat that Tuggeranong United had sort of exposed against a 3-person defence of Belconnen and Canberra Olympic earlier. So they really, full credit to Sam and the team. They've done their homework and they've executed the plan really, really well. And, on the flip side of that, you've got Paolo Romero. He's been around for a couple of weeks and you can start to see little signs. And I remember speaking to one of the players at Tuggeranong and them saying, he's been pretty clear, give me 4 or 5 weeks and let's see where we're at and what we're doing. And I think that's a really good way to go about it. He probably needs 2 or 3 weeks to get familiar with the players and work out whether what he's got in his head is going to work, and be able to alter that. So I think the third time around when they play Wagga or they play whoever, we'll see a really different Tuggeranong outfit that's starting to grow. And I don't think they're going to go through without, with 0 points this year. I think they've got a really good chance of picking up some surprise points as well. Like, it won't be a 1-1 draw with Wagga or something like that. They're just as likely to pinch points off Belconnen as they are off, anybody else.
And the window's still open till the end of the month. Do you see either of these two sides sort of getting more recruits in, considering, like you mentioned at the start of the season, Tuggeranong were doing something similar to what Wagga are doing now. They were looking for players and they even put something on Facebook as well. Do you see them having any luck in that department?
Look, it's hard. Look, it's obviously hard.
Sorry, I know it's probably the worst question I could ask.
No, it's love transfer speculation. It's obviously harder for Wagga to bring people in than it is for anybody else. And they would have to be asking themselves the question, if somebody became available, who are they going to target? Are they willing to target somebody who's Canberra based, who might not necessarily be able to train week in, session.
Then they'll show up to the games.
Yeah. But, you've got some, a quality footballer or two that when you travel to Canberra, which is always a hard ask for Wagga every couple of weeks, that you've got that quality there ready to go, or even just travel down for, the other way for a game. So it's harder for them. I think for Tuggeranong, for them, it's less about recruitment and more now about solidifying what they have and starting to grow the group that they have and building for next year. I think their recruitment drive probably starts after the final whistle of the final round, where Paolo's hopefully got them to a point where they're really competitive and they're starting to stretch teams, and that will then bring the interest. Because at the moment, unless they're going to go, sniffing around reserve grade and pulling players from there, I don't know that there's too many players coming across. And if you're taking players from other teams' reserve grades, unless they're, tried and trusted sort of previous first grade footballers, you might as well give your own kids a go and start from there is sort of my thoughts.
And next up we have Canberra Olympic and Gungahlin United 3-2, Vandenbroek, Sykes and Holst with the goals for Olympic, Percival and Ella Brown with the goals for Gungahlin United. You joined me there for the commentary. Olympic came out of the gates flying, didn't they, Matty, with Ashley Sykes in the opening couple of minutes, hitting both posts, I think, actually, left and right. They utilised their pace very well, broke on Gungahlin very quickly, gave they found Ashley Sykes in space. They found Vandenbroek in space to run into the holes. And Sykes, like I mentioned, was deadly as always. I thought besides the forward plays, I thought Sienna Farrow was also very, very good. She did a lot defensively, and she also was a great outlet down that left-hand side for Sykes or Vandenbroek or Heather Garriock going down that side as well. Yeah, but in terms of Gungahlin, they'll be disappointed with the way they started the first half. We mentioned on commentary quite a bit, but safe to say that whatever Diego said to them worked. They came out in the second half and they were a different team. They got themselves back into it, but that whole goal from long range, which I missed because I was quickly taking a note. But that one, when that happened, it sort of took the sails out of Gungahlin, despite them getting another goal back. So there was a lot in this one, Matty. We probably got lucky. We probably chose the right game to do that weekend. It was certainly an entertaining one. What'd you make of it?
Yeah, it was definitely entertaining, and I probably didn't think it was going to be as entertaining as it was at half time. It really looked like Olympic were going to run away with it. And you're right, Matt. They dominated from the outset, and Gungahlin seemed to be, almost overly concerned about Sykes's pace in behind it and Vandenbroek. We made the comment in the call that Maddie Percival in particular was sitting sort of 7 or 8 meters off the line, and that made it really hard for any of the centre backs to sort of challenge Sykes with any kind of insurance in behind them. And one thing, going back and looking at the other game, the influence of Garriock actually stood out a little bit more when I went back and had a look. She's got all the technical skills, and I made the comment at the time that I would have liked to have seen the players get in her face a little bit more and push her, but she did on occasions make some really good space for herself and actually found herself in pockets. And I think her influence on the game was probably more evident that as she came off, the momentum that Gungahlin were able to pick up when she came off and Atulu came on in the second half speaks influence of her influence throughout the game. And it actually meant that Sykes started to drift out. And I wonder now if teams looking at Canberra Olympic, it's not so much how do you stop Ash Sykes, because that's sometimes an impossible ask, but how do you stop the ball to Sykes getting in there, and that'll be the key. But you're right about Farah. She was solid as a rock defensively and really aggressive going forward. And it probably wasn't until McCann slipped into the centre back role for Gungahlin and Legends came out into a wide role that we started to see a little bit more sort of positivity. And there's probably a couple of questions for Gungahlin to ask themselves, and it's particularly around that midfield area. We saw Pennyfield start in the midfield again with the two DeMarco sisters, and is that their best three? If they're going to continue with a 3-person midfield, Corbett was out. Gumbali, who probably could have played centre back on the weekend, is another one who didn't play, but the best 11 from Gungahlin, which we all, probably the last couple of years, I've been pretty confident that, you've probably got 12 to fit in 11, but it's a pretty, stable group. Just watching it over the last couple of weeks, I'm probably 3 or 4 weeks. I'm not too sure now. For me, Pennyfield, in that second half on the wing was way more effective. I mean, she almost got a goal 2 minutes into that second half. And Atulu coming into the centre of midfield and her just essentially playing a holding role, that, people of my age grew up, knowing as the Vince Grella role, where you just sort of sit there and sweep it up and distribute the play. And that freed up the two DeMarco girls as well. So there's some questions that Diego's probably, going away and thinking about what's my best front three and what's my best midfield three, because in the grand scheme of things, once they made the adjustment in the back four, they actually managed it not too bad. But there are some certain question marks there, and it might almost be what's my best 11 without Michelle Heyman. In terms of, we assume Michelle will play a number 9 when she becomes available. So let's put all the other pieces in place. So we've only got to plug Michelle in, and that's where I'm not sure where Gungahlin are at yet, whereas Olympic seem really settled, 3-5-2, Ash Sykes getting in behind, Farah, Geordie Oida had a good first game. Miro being a box-to-box player in the midfield now to take some pressure off Hardwick and Garrick as well. And we're in for a really interesting stretch with them because they did look the goods for 45 minutes yesterday, and for probably the last half an hour, they looked like they were in real trouble. And I think they've got I think you're doing the Belconnen game with Jeremy this week, and that'll give us a really good indication of where Olympic are truly at, especially if, we're talking about, or I'm talking about the reliance of, Heather Garrick, organising things and helping run the show. Can she go 75, 85 minutes against a Belconnen to help organise and control that group? And if she can't, who else can step up? And that's the question mark for me around Olympic. Is their 11's probably really, really good. What's underneath the 11? Do they have the bodies in play to be able to finish a game off? And there's some question marks on that, I think, after what we saw yesterday.
And the last time, we're going to mention it quickly in the preview, but the last time they faced Belconnen, that was when they were going sort of through their defensive transition. They were trying to figure out what to do defensively, and they've been pretty solid defensively. Like, bar this game where they conceded two, they haven't really conceded too much recently. That should help them going into the Belconnen game, right?
Yeah, it should absolutely fill them with confidence. And I think the really interesting thing that I can't wait to see on Saturday is do Olympic hold true and stick to that 3-5-2.
Yeah.
Because Belconnen's traditionally played with a front three. So if Akira Bobbin's playing, up front, are you happy to leave her one-on-one with, Jameson or Hals or Cook or whoever it may be, and use that midfield dominance that we talked about yesterday during the call? So, well, they had 5 across the midfield, and that was the killer for Gungahlin. They couldn't work out how to deal with that 5 across the midfield. So if they can impose themselves in that way, I think it lends itself to a really interesting contest. The one thing that Belconnen probably have, and I know I'm probably getting the preview space that Gungahlin don't have, is that really dominant central midfielder in Michaela Thornton.
Yeah.
So how do Olympic deal with that aspect? That'll be the key thing, because Elka Atulu only played 45 minutes, and for the first 25 of that 45 minutes, she was the boss. She ran the show, and at times you thought she was single-handedly going to drag her back in, and she almost did at the end there if it wasn't for Haynes flying off her line to make a vital save. So interesting things there, but Olympic will be thrilled with the 3 points just to get that 4-point buffer, and you just start to get the feeling now that any game between Olympic, Gungahlin and West Canberra is going to go a long way to deciding who gets that 4th spot.
And the CUA are also only 1 point above Olympic as well, so it's going to be a very, very interesting top 6 to say the least. And the last matchup of the round, we've got Belconnen United 2, Canberra United Academy 0, Vanessa Ryan and Riley Ewan with the goals for Belconnen. Hard-fought victory for Belco, because they were coming up against a pretty informed side in the CUA, obviously defeating Canberra, Croatia during the season, which Belconnen haven't been able to do during the season. I know they beat them in the Charity Shield. Regarding both of Belconnen's goals, I thought Vanessa Ryan's goal was very good team play, broke away, made that run, and in a very tight space made a 1-2, and when she retrieved it, put it in the back of the net. The CUA, from what I saw, though, they had a few chances in this matchup, but they weren't able to bring that sort of they weren't able to impose the same game plan in the Belco match that they were able to in the Canberra Croatia match. So what did you make of this one, Matty? It was an important win for Belconnen, of course. When you're tying with at the top of the table with the champions, you need to pick up, the 3 points every time you can.
Yeah, and that first goal by Ryan from just as as somebody who's coaching the Premier, that got me really excited. That sort of one-touch combination play, and they're the things that probably make the Belconnen coaching staff really excited, because they're the moments that are so hard to break down, or so hard to stop. It doesn't matter who it is. And I think this is a really big step forward for Belconnen. CUA, quite rightly, probably on a massive high after beating Canberra, Croatia, because there's not many people who've done that in the last couple of years. But I think Belconnen, they held the game plan well, and I think they probably matched up a little bit better with CUA than Canberra Croatia did, just in terms of that aggressiveness through the midfield and that ability to drive. I mean, it's one of those things where Belconnen, I mentioned Michaela Thornton earlier. Like she's the heart and soul of that team, and sometimes with Canberra Croatia in that midfield area, we don't necessarily have someone who takes control because there's so many good players. You don't necessarily need to, but when stuff starts to get tight and it starts to get hard, you really need somebody to stand up. And go back a couple of weeks to Canberra Croatia, and Grace Gill came off, and to not have the leader out there makes it hard. Whereas Thornton saw everything through yesterday and played a massive role in Ewan's goal for number 2. And CUA, although disappointed with the result, they're probably much happier with the performance. I mean, the last time the teams played, I think it was 7-1 or something, and the academy come off back-to-back games against Canberra Croatia where they've been beaten up on the scoreboard and probably beaten up on the physically as well. But full credit to Vicky Linton to what she's done since she's come back from holidays. She's made the world of difference there, and we're starting to see an academy unit that we were used to seeing probably in the days where Ray Dower, Ruben Clancy and Ryan Grogan were there. They've really come back with a vengeance, and there's certainly a heap of positives there. They weren't as clinical as they would have liked to have been, but you'd probably be more worried if you weren't making chances as opposed to not putting them away. And I think they'd probably fancy themselves the next time around. There's still a couple of tweaks in that game where I think if they can get the midfield runner beyond, especially Hunt when she's playing in the 9 like they did against Canberra Olympic, that's actually going to create Belconnen a real load of problems through there, and maybe just 1 or 2 kids who are off their game, which is going to happen because they're kids. But for the most part, this time last year, the academy, if you'd offered them a 2-0 loss to Belconnen, they probably would have taken it. So really, really pleasing signs for them, and no doubt the only way is up from there.
And now we head into the prediction/previews of round 10. We start with Belconnen United Canberra Olympic, Saturday, June 19th, 3 p.m. at McKellar Park. Like you mentioned in that breakdown of Canberra Olympic, this is going to be the real test for them to see how far they've come. We know they've come far, but this is the real test, because when they faced each other last, it was 7-1 or 7-2, something like that, where they had a lot more chances than I think you called that game. They had a lot more chances than they put away Olympic. But this is going to be an interesting one. Michael's going with Belco, so is Jeremy. I'm going to go with Belco as well, but I don't think it's going to be that big a scoreline as it was before. I think it's going to be a pretty tight one. And like you said, it's going to be that Belco's, sort of mission to stop those balls going into Ash Sykes. And what are Olympic going to do if their original game plan of getting the balls to Ash Sykes or to Vandenbroek doesn't work? How are they going to sort of come back from that? I could look, they're good enough for a draw or even a win, but I just think Belco recently they started to pick themselves up again after that loss to Canberra Croatia, and they've done really well, and they've kept some good clean sheets as well. So Belconnen will be happy with that. And it always helps when you've got someone, Christina Esposito, in the goals. I forgot to mention that there was one save where she made early on where Canberra United player, I forgot who it was. One of the defenders made a mistake, passed it to the attacker. She immediately ran in, but immediately Esposito was off her line and cleared up the ball. That makes yourself so much more confident as a defender when you know you've got a keeper that can do that for you. What do you think about this one, Matty?
It's always nice to have a keeper who can clean up after your mess. And Esposito's been good. I think back to even Canberra Croatia at McKellar and her making this huge save to a right-hand side off her header in the bottom right-hand corner. And she can make all the difference in the world. And yeah, I think I'd lean towards Belconnen as well in this one. And if I think back to the last time they played each other, Belconnen were really successful in turning it into almost a scrappy transition game. Like a lot of their goals weren't necessarily by design. They were by an individual creating something or an individual, winning a turnover, or more often than not, Olympic just turning the ball over. And I think Olympic are a lot more composed outfit now than they were. My concern is, as I mentioned earlier, is I don't know how they stop Michaela Thornton, and I don't know how they restrict her influence. And I think that's the key from a Belconnen point of view. If you can take Michaela Thornton out of the play, I don't know who else drives them to victory. You've got Katie Woodman there who will pop up and is potentially likely to sneak you a goal. But in terms of that distribution, that drive to get it through to your Talia Backhouses and your Ewans and your Bobbins, Thornton is the one who creates those transition moments and allows them to drive. And they might be able to contain it for 45, 50 minutes. But I don't know that they can do it for the full 90. And I think that midfield outfit for Belconnen, plus the pressure that they'll get from their front three, might be able to restrict those balls to Sykes. But in saying that, Sykes only needs, one or two chances, and it could be 1 or 2-0. But I just not sure that Olympic are quite at the point yet where they can contain that outfit. But it'll be a cracker of a game, and it's probably only a 2-1 win or a 3-1 win maybe to Belconnen.
And next up, we have West Canberra Wanderers against Canberra United Academy, Sunday, June 20th, 12:45 p.m. at Melrose Synthetic. Michael's going for a draw. Jeremy's going for a CUA. I'm going to go with a CUA victory, but I think this match was close last time. I think CUA won 2-1. I think it's going to be similar. It's going to be probably a little more. It's going to be just as intense as I think we saw that Canberra-Croatia game, but probably a little more because West Canberra have that intensity about them. Still no Tiana Jaber. I'm not sure what goes with Sarah Whitfield, but I think I just think the intensity that CUA are going to bring might just overcome them a little bit, and the back-to-back 4-1s doesn't help. Like I said, they still don't have Jaber, who's a big loss there, not just defensively, but she's so important for that transition from defense to attack. Which I think when she comes back, you'll see the difference that she makes in that regard. Like, they can still defend well without her, but like I meant, that transition, that link-up play, which Jeremy mentioned last week on the show, will be crucial. What about you, Matty?
Yeah, I think the thing that plays in West Canberra's favour is that it's at Melrose. So the pitch is a bit smaller. So they're not going to have to cover as much ground. J-Bar's ability to be able to win the ball and help them transition, although it will still be missed, isn't quite as critical compared to Hawker, where it's just such a really big, wide, expansive area. And I think that's why I'm kind of leaning towards a draw there. And Stanbury will be really amped up to at least take something off this place, off CUA, given that I think Gungahlin are playing Wagga and things like that. So I think this is a good opportunity for them to reset. They were really close last time, as you mentioned, at Hawker. And although there'll be a heap of energy and a really big press from CUA, I just think the fact that the ground is so small at Melrose will just relieve a little bit of pressure. There's not as much space for people like Christopherson and Hunt to expose him behind through there, and the Alex McKenzie and her physicality and her speed to be able to beat players 1v1. Because if she gets away, on that small pitch, then she'll be hard to pull down. So I think it's probably going to be, like a 1-1, this one.
Next up, we have Canberra Croatia Tuggeranong United, Sunday, June 20th, 2:30 p.m. at Deakin Stadium. Michael says Canberra Croatia, so does Jeremy. I'm going to go with Canberra Croatia as well. Like we've mentioned, there are positive aspects about Tuggeranong United, and they did do really well in this fixture against them. I know it was like a 6-0 scoreline or 6-1 scoreline in the end, but 4 of those goals came in the last 10 minutes. And before that, they had a very good, resolute defensive performance against Canberra Croatia. But Canberra Croatia just seemed like a steam train, a bullet train at the moment ever since that loss. And I think they needed that loss. I think Nick came on and said, I'm happy that we needed to lose eventually. Like, you're not going to go through a massive season. And sometimes it's, the monkey off the back, getting that loss out of the way. They didn't lose it all last season. So so far it's worked to their advantage. And like we've mentioned for Romero, it's still going to take a little bit more time to get used to this. Matty?
Yeah, and you'd rather have your first loss a couple of weeks ago than in the semi-final, right? So better to get it out of the way early. And look, I think Canberra Croatia will be too strong, and I think what we'll see though is it's still the same defensive grip from Tuggeranong United, and hopefully with Steph Coates back, that gives them a little bit of extra confidence through the back line there, and looking to expose Canberra Croatia on the counter for their opportunities. And for Tuggeranong United, games like this, people aren't expecting them to necessarily go through and pinch a point here, but it'll be about little moments for them. The moment that they stop Palombi, or the moment that they've created the chance and they hit the post, and just those little moments of belief that although they're frustrating because they didn't come off, because I hit the post, I didn't finish it, or I tripped over before I got to goal. What it starts to do, it gives Paolo Romero something to point at and go, okay, look, we're putting these things in place and we're starting to build, and we're creating, chances against the best team in the league, and we're holding them out for these periods in time, and we'll start to find that, they'll probably be hoping that they can keep Canberra Croatia out for, 75 minutes this time instead of, 50 or 60 like it was last time. And it'll just be really little moments for them that'll help them to continue to grow. But it's hard to see anything other than a Canberra Croatia victory at the end of the day.
Next up, we have Gungahlin United, Wagga City Wanderers, Sunday, June 20th, 3 p.m. Gungahlin enclosed. Michael says Gungahlin, Jeremy says Gungahlin. I'm going to agree with them. Gungahlin, this is probably a must-win for them. I know they won last week against Tuggeranong, but this is a must-win for them in terms of the points. We mentioned it before the table. Everyone needs to pick up. Everyone in that area needs to start picking up some points now before you get to that. Before pressure starts to grow. And we mentioned before, Gungahlin United aren't used to being in this position. They haven't in a very long time. And I think the next couple of weeks is going to be key to show how Gungahlin are going to respond to being in a position that they're not used to. Matty?
Yeah, and we talk about must win for Wagga. It's must win for Gungahlin. I think this is a huge reset opportunity for them to try and get a bit of confidence back. We know how hard it is for Wagga to drive all the way up here and play, and they'll be full of confidence having played Tuggeranong as well. But Gungahlin really need to get this right on the weekend, and I think they need to score early as well. I think if Wagga can set up a defensive block that contains Gungahlin for 20, 25 minutes, there's going to be some real mental demons in there for Gungahlin, no matter how much they're dominating, because we saw how much they dominated for periods yesterday, and they couldn't get over the line, and that's going to sit in the back of the mind, and it'll be a really big sort of mental push from Diego and the team through the week to really plan it out in terms of patience and not getting frustrated, and whatever he believes his best 11 is at this point in time, they've got to start on the weekend. They've got to get all these troops going, because if they get a draw or heaven forbid lose to Wagga, that's a really dangerous spot that could sort of send their season spiraling for a team that we were all talking about as a potential top 2 challenger. It'll make life really, really difficult. And I think they will. I think they'll do it. I sound very doom and gloom and the world's coming to an end. That's the pessimistic coach in me. But I think Gungahlin they'll do it. I think they'll pull it together. I think we saw good signs with the DeMarco sisters in the second half. I think Pennyfield out wide for me is a must. And if they do that with the two with Brown and Brown up front, I think they'll be fine. But it's just a matter of going out there and executing now, because they've got a big couple of weeks ahead of them as well, and this is their reset point.
Indeed, and I forgot to mention before in that Gungahlin bit that Courtney McCann was also very impressive in centre back when she got moved there. Had a tough job trying to mark Ashley Sykes and Vanderbroek, but she was pretty impressive as well. Yeah,
she was brilliant. She to have that flexibility within the team and we spoke about it in the call, how can I change the team without making a sub, and being able to pull McCann in and push Legends a little bit wider, and from a personal point of view, I prefer Legends in that wider role. I think she just gives so much going forward, no matter how good she is defensively. That flexibility is brilliant. And McCann, she stood up to probably the best in, if one of the best, if not the best in the competition, and had immediate impact, and that had a flow-on effect. Legends was able to creep forward, got a shot on goal. And then when Atulu came in, they had that little bit of extra coverage there. And because McCann was doing such a good job on Sykes and Vandenbroek, it meant that Atuli didn't have to stress too much around that space, and she could do her thing as well, which is always an impressive thing when Atuli's able to have free reign. So
certainly is. Matty, it was a pleasure as always. Thanks for coming on, and I hope to have you back on in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, anytime, Matt. Cheers, mate.
Hello, everyone. We're back with NPL2, and here on the show today, we welcome back to the show after quite a while, Paul Townsley. Paul, how are you today, mate?
I'm really good. I was actually quite flattered to be asked. I thought you'd forgotten about me, but then I realised it was a public holiday and that probably nobody else was available. So, yeah. So here we are.
That's not the truth, but anyway. All right. So let's get straight into it, shall we? The first matchup of NPL2 we had this weekend was ANU 3-2 over Wagga City Wanderers. We had Luke Stevens scoring 2 goals for the Wanderers, and we had Carters, Peterkin, and Twyford scoring the goals for ANU. A strong but hard-fought victory from ANU, which keeps them on the top with O'Connor, so it was important points for them. And they also had 4 players out in this matchup, and they had a player come off after about 10 minutes, I was told, with a hamstring injury. So they spent pretty much the first half in control, and then Wagga City got back into it in the second half. There was a bit of a controversial call, I was told, for one of the penalties that was received for Wagga City Wanderers. ANU weren't too happy about that, but Wagga City Wanderers fought pretty well to get back into it in the second half. Jake Plonges, sorry if I got that wrong, hit the post, and Nash Suleiman also had a shot saved. And from all accounts, Paul, if I get it sent to me, I'll send it to you later. Luke Stevens apparently scored a terrific volley, actually. So the ball ricocheted off one of the defenders, and then boom, massive volley from 20 to 25 meters out. What do you think about this result, Paul? It's an important win for ANU. They got to, if they want to keep near the top, they have to get as many points as possible because there's like a 3-horse race now.
Yeah, 4-horse race. Thank you very much. I mean, I think we're in a situation at the moment where obviously, the travel over to Wagga and Yoogali is always a tough ask. And I think that, if you get an injury early on, I think, having to reshuffle, ANU are a very, very well-organised team. They press with intensity, they recover very, very quickly, and they break the game up. So it's very, very difficult for teams to sort of get a foothold and get consistent possession against them. I think that Ron Peterking's starting to score again. He's tried and tested, and he scores goals. Sam Carter's again. He's scoring. So they're in a really good position at the moment. ANU. Wagga. Wagga have done it tough. They've probably played. I think I had a quick look this morning, and I think they've used 26 players. In the first sort of 8 games, so like players that have actually sort of either been on the bench or actually played. And 26 players is a lot of players to keep any sort of consistency and rhythm going for them. But they play periods of football, and I watched them against O'Connor Knights. The O'Connor Knights sort of came away with what seemed like quite an easy victory. There was periods of the game where actually they were in the game, and they are dangerous on the counter attack. And when they're at home, it's always it's always a challenge going over there. So, but I think that they'll have a message. They'll have a message before the end of the season. They'll turn one of the big boys over, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, they've already gotten 2 wins. You were there. I'm sure you would have been there when they played White Eagles when they got the victory. And I know there was a red card and whatnot involved, but sometimes you have to, have those sort of moments go your way, and more importantly, take advantage of it. So,
yeah,
considering how poorly they started the season, there seems to be a good vibe now around Wagga after losing quite a few in a row. Then they got 2 wins, and then they haven't won in a couple now, but they're probably putting better performances than they did at the start of the season.
Yeah, I think they are, and I think that they're in a situation when they've got a good 3 points against us, and obviously there was 1 or 2 things that set us back on that day. But yeah, I still think that they're a team that can cause 1 or 2 problems for the guys chasing the 4. Definitely. There's still a long way to go. And, although we look at the table and we see, they've only got a few points, but that can turn around very, very quickly if you get a little bit of a run going on. So, that can change very quickly. So.
Yeah, and we'll touch a little bit more on ANU when we get into the previews, because they're in a very big, high-profile matchup this weekend as well. All right, next up we have O'Connor Knights 3, Yoogali SC 0, O'Rourke with 2 goals, and Josip Jadric with a goal on his return. Before we get into some of this news, there were some new signings for O'Connor. They had Nikola Trajkovski from Queanbeyan City and Dean and Dennis Misic from Brindabella, as well as Paketi Manda from Western Molonglo. So quite a few new signings in there for O'Connor. And I guess that's no surprise, really, considering they had quite a few injuries over the last 2 or so months, Paul.
Yeah, I think they're looking a bit stronger now that sort of Jack Rutherford's been back from injury the last few games. Marcin Josip has been a little bit in and out, but we know Josip's a quality player. David McCarron as well. I think he's had a game off, or might still be injured actually, David, but he scored 68. So they're strengthening. They look pretty ominous actually. Miro's got them going really, really well. And the big thing that I've noticed really is that they're defensively, I think he's got them going really, really well. And again, we've mentioned ANU, but again, the 2 teams that have conceded less than everybody else, and to go to Yoogali and keep a clean sheet, I think Miro's obviously set them up really, really well to get that result.
And that also puts them in a pretty steady position head-to-head wise anyway against Yoogali, because I think they beat them 5-0 in the previous fixture at home and now 3-0 here. So they've done quite well against Yoogali in the past, but to go to Griffith, as you know, it's a long trip, and Yoogali are a quality football side. So O'Connor really showed up on the day. But in terms of Yoogali, what do you make of them so far this season? I know they've had a few issues with the traveling, and sometimes they have the pick of their players. Sometimes they don't, just depending on when the day is. But they're usually pretty strong at home.
Yeah, I think that. I mean, they've had quite a tough run as well, because they had the run in the FFA Cup, which meant that I think there was 1 week where they're actually sort of back to back 2 journeys in the week, which is a lot to ask. Especially with guys working as well. And I understand Danny Roach sort of works nights as well, so I think he was sleeping on the coach on the way back before kickoff. I think so I think. Yoogali are hot on the heels of White Eagles, just that point behind, with the top 4 having to play each other this weekend. So, it's going to be interesting to see how that pans out for them. As I said, Danny Roach, he continues to hit the net. He's always been a threat. And I think that, when you look at the results, when you think that, they went Western Molonglo, they won 3-2. Then they lost 3-2 at Queanbeyan. They won 5-4 at Brindabella, and then 1-0 to us. So every game that they're actually in, So I think that, again, Yoogali is another team that will have something to say about what's going to happen above them. There's no doubt about that, and we've got to go there. I think we've got to go there, and we'll go back to back in weekends. So it'll be interesting.
It certainly will be, and we saw their quality last season in the NPL 2 final. Of course, it was a shortened season, so I'm sure it would have been easier to amass the players for it. But in general, do you expect Yoogali to push for that top 4? They're only 4 points out.
I think there's a range of results. I think this next couple of weeks sort of sees the top 4 sort of play each other. And especially for White Eagles, because we play obviously O'Connor this week, and the Joys of Queanbeyan the week after. So the way that the sort of the draw's gone, we're going into a tough period, and and Yoogali could quite easily pick up some points, and the pressure's back on us again. So, yeah, I think, as I said, I think they're a team that are going to have us here, and I think people looking at the table sort of go, oh, well, they've had a bit of a tricky start, but as I say, there's still 12 games to go. So,
there's a long way to go, and I think there's a lot to play out, as we'll mention in the previews. But next up, we had Canberra White Eagles, Townsley, not you, Sandtrack, McCarthy, Daramy with the goals for White Eagles, and Zach Lawrence with both the goals for Brindabella Blues. So it was 4-2 on the day. Just to state, Paul Townsley, for you guys who don't know, is the under-23s coach of White Eagles. The new head coach, though, well, new as in he's returned. Graham Plath gets his first victory back after last round. They went down to ANU. So another strong performance from White Eagles, Paul, especially in the first half. And Ben Townsley as well, gathering some good steam after he's been in and out with injuries, and a goal and an assist on the day. Yeah,
I think Ben's been out for 1 or 2 weeks. He's spent a little bit of time in the 23s as well with a damaged toe. But yeah, it was good to see him back playing with the first grade. David Rodriguez came in because Rowan Maxwell was unwell. Rowan's been playing really, really well. The younger end of the group have been going really, really well. Milan Sandtrack, he's starting to come into a little bit of form. He caused Brindabella a lot of problems, especially in the first half. And Ed McCarthy, what can I say? He just keeps scoring at the moment. So, like from anywhere, and that's the thing about Ed at the moment. I mean, I think he got him with his head this weekend, and 25-yarder the other day, and then a volley the other. So, Ed's going well. I think we're starting to say yes, there's been some changes, but I think Graham's been around for a while. He knows the score in NPL2. And he's been part of the club as well. So from an adjustment point of view, I don't think it's that huge. I think I think the younger players are stepping up. I think that when we play well, I think we have we look okay. So I think again, we'll have a say in what goes on. So.
And what are your thoughts on Brindabella? Because they were a team who a lot of people talked about at the start of the season. A lot of people were whenever I talked to coaches, they were very complimentary of them, saying, geez, they gave us a tough match, or they were unlucky not to get some points, or they were unlucky not to win. And for ages, there was this feeling around the club saying it's eventually going to come because of how well they were playing. But now they're go 8 or 9 rounds now, only 1 win. And they've lost their top scorer, Curtis Schaefer, to Belconnen United in the NPL1. And they lost both the Misiches recently to O'Connor Knights as well. So from someone like Zoran Glavnich's position, you need the likes of Zach Lawrence and whatnot to step up, and he did today. He did very well. Russ said that as well last week, and he scored 2 goals. Yeah. He's been very good throughout the season also. They're still very good going forward, and they always fight back. But how difficult is that as a coach when you're that close? You've been that close to winning so many times, but you're just not getting the results.
I think it's difficult. I think that the one thing that Brindabella always have is a really, really good atmosphere. I think the boys are very tight. They're very well connected. Zoran, and Zoran's an experienced coach.
Yeah.
He's been, he'll have had difficult times before as a coach. And, as it stands at the moment, I'm sure that, he'll continue to try and get the best out of the group of players that he has at his disposal. Losing, I think any team that loses a striker that's sort of scored 98 games.
Yeah.
At any level, is going to be difficult to replace. As you say, Zach did play well at the weekend, and at times they play decent football. They just got a habit at the moment where they concede goals in clusters, and I think that they concede 1 and sometimes it's 2 and 3, then they come back into the game. But then you're always at risk of being caught on the counter because you're actually pushing, because you're chasing games. And I think Zoran knows that. He's an experienced coach, and he'll rally the troops together. If you look at the obviously we'll go to it, but Western Molonglo game this weekend becomes a massive game for both those two, just to get a little bit of momentum, because Brindabella then go into games against O'Connor, ANU and Yoogali. So it's a big game. This weekend for both those teams is actually a big game to see if we can get a little bit of momentum. So,
it certainly will be. And the last match of the round before we get into the previews is Queanbeyan City 4, Western Molonglo 1. Shields with 2 goals, Adams, Josifowski, and Western Molonglo's goal was from Sellers. Another impressive display from Queanbeyan City. Good momentum for them heading into the massive match against ANU on the weekend as they continue to stay the course. Only 1 point below ANU and O'Connor. 3-0 up in the first half, Paul. Dominate a lot of the play in possession. Mark Shields again on the score sheet. But before we get into Western Molonglo, what do you think about Queanbeyan City so far this season? A lot of 5 now.
Yeah, I think, I think, at the moment, O'Connor are top and they're going really, really, really well. But when you look at the team sheet that Gabby's putting out at the moment with regards to Queanbeyan, Mark Shields, Michael Adams, Michael Keita, and then, that sort of elusive character, Dom Colacello, suddenly popping up on the team sheet the other day.
He's one of the new signings. I think he played 20 or so minutes, something like that, at the end of the matchup.
Yeah, and put him alongside, Dean and Michael Keita, Michael Adams. They've got a lot of go forward, and bringing Dom into that sort of midfield, offers that sort of security. He's a very, very talented player. Mark Shields, 8 goals in 9. Michael Adams, 7 in 9. So they've got firepower all over. So again, teams have to set up to work against that, and they've got to stay nice and compact and work really, really hard. You work rate against teams like Queanbeyan and O'Connor is going to be massive, because they can hurt you. So, yeah.
And Western Molonglo didn't have a first half to cherish from all accounts, but being 3-0 down, of course, that meant they needed to come out and have a positive performance. And from more reports, they did for the first 20 or so minutes. And when they got their goal through a penalty, through a handball from Queanbeyan, they conceded not too long after from Mark Shields, and that always sort of puts a float in your sails. Even if it is just 3-1, you have that momentum. But boom, that sort of gets the float out of the sails. But overall, you mentioned how it's going to be a big game for both Brindis and Western Molonglo. What about Western Molonglo so far this season for you? I know they've had quite a few injuries and players in and out. They just haven't been settled like they were, at least at the start of last season anyway.
And I think that's probably been the key for Ned. He's actually getting some sort of consistency. And I think he struggled with 1 or 2 injuries. I think he's had 1 or 2 key players carrying knocks. And I think that, when you're a small squad, it hurts you. And, I know that 1 or 2 of the lads from the 23s have stepped up and, and they've played, and their 23s are going well as well. So, there's still a lot of good things at the moment. And, Ned's doing it tough at the moment, but, and again, they're a team that can, play really good football for periods of games. And if they can get their nose in front, then, it may give them a confidence boost to actually see a game out, as opposed to sometimes when you're chasing games, the risk is you get caught and suddenly, you concede a lot more than the game probably should be. But, as you say, I think this weekend's going to be massive. I think it's a really, really big game for both these teams this weekend with regards to confidence and moving into this middle period of the season. So, I think, and there's some quality there. There is some quality at Western, and hopefully, they put a decent, a full 90 minutes together.
And let's get into round 10, shall we? Let's start with ANU against Queanbeyan City. Saturday, June 19th, 3:15 at ANU South Oval. One of the massive matches for this weekend. Michael's going with Queanbeyan on this one. I'm going to go the opposite. I'm going to go with ANU. I think it'll be extremely close like it was last time. I just think the thing that is hindering Queanbeyan City at the moment is when you look at the matches between all 3 of the top 3, ANU are the only ones Queanbeyan are the only ones that haven't won. They didn't beat O'Connor. They didn't beat ANU. They were very close matches. And there's no reason why Queanbeyan can't win. I just think in these big matches, they haven't shown that they can, whether they've got all the chances. Like apparently they did against ANU, but they just but ANU were just very solid defensively. They just haven't been able to break down like O'Connor and ANU when they put out a more defensive side, because we all know they can play both sides of the ball, but against Queanbeyan, they switch it on defensively and they show up. I think this will be a very close one. I'm going to go with ANU. What do you see in this matchup? What do you think will be some of the key things in it?
I think that the key things obviously for me will be the midfield battle. Obviously the strength of Michael Keita sort of carrying the ball, and that's very different, to sort of the passing game that Michael can carry, and he carries hard. With sort of Dean, and if you got Dom fit as well, Michael Adams in front of that. I think that my view would be that I think if they win the midfield battle, I think Queanbeyan will probably come away with the points. But again, ANU, that's very, very well organised, very well drilled, very, very high intensity, very fit. So it's going to be a battle of what I see as two sort of contrasting sort of teams, really, I think. I think ANU will sort of work very, very hard, keep it very, very tight, and look for that sort of counter and see if they can get either Sam or Ron Peter King on that break and get them 1-on-1. So.
And next up, we've got Canberra White Eagles, O'Connor Knights, another massive matchup. The derby as well. Saturday, June 19th, 3:15 p.m. at Woden Park enclosed. I'm sure the Eagle Burgers will be there and sizzling before this one. Michael is going with White Eagles in this one. It's a tough one. I'm going to go with O'Connor. Their form has just been insane at the moment. And I thought if they were going to slip up or get a draw or whatnot, Yoogali, that trip to Yoogali would have been it. But they just came out and they were absolutely terrific in that matchup. That easily could have been a banana peel or a draw for them or something like that. But they proved their quality, and recently they've just been in very good form, and they did beat ANU. And I think that was a match I saw you at, and they were very good against ANU as well. So, and you've mentioned how well they can play defensively.
Yeah, and that was a very sort of cagey. It was like watching a game of chess, wasn't it? It was very physical. It was very tight. It was, both teams working really hard, to break the other out. And the goal came. Solitary goal came sort of quite late on, which was a big goal. It was a big goal. We're going into it with hopefully, a full strength group to pick from. It is going to be a tough game. The last game was a tough game. When you're battling in the top four, there isn't an easy one. So, and especially this season, because there's not much to pick between any of the teams when they actually play well. So I think that obviously I've got to err on that side and sort of say that I think we'll sneak it. Again, it's a difficult one to pick, because I think that there's those teams at the top, neither one are going to give an awful lot away.
So that's joint first with ANU against third place Queanbeyan, and then joint first O'Connor against fourth place White Eagles. And like you mentioned, considering the results, obviously if they're both draws, then it just all stays the way it is. But if either side can beat each other, then I think we're in for an interesting couple of rounds, like you mentioned. And another big one, when I looked at all the seven fixtures at the start of the season, I said this specific fixture round is the biggest for all the league. So we've got Brindabella as well against Western Molonglo. So all four matches this week going to be pretty close, I think. So we got Saturday, June 19th, 4:45 p.m. Ipen Park, which is out in Corwell. Brindabella Blues against Western Molonglo. Michael's going with the Brindies. I'm going to say a draw for this one. I think the Brindies are due for some points, and they've got the attacking talent. We've all seen it. They just, like you said, they just need to sort of figure out how to stop those goals in clusters. And I think Western Molonglo are starting to get a lot of their players back that were injured. So, and they're always up for this game. From what I've been told, the Brindies and Western Molonglo is always a close game. I'm going to go for draw on this one. What do you think will be some of the key things to look out for in this match?
I think if Western Molonglo get their players back, which I've sort of heard that there's a little bit of momentum with regards to getting the players back from injury. If they get a full week training together, pending rain and anything else that can happen in Canberra. I think that it's going to be actually a tight game, and I think we've seen that both teams can score. I think it's going to be a battle of defences, really. I think I think both teams have got to shore up and try and get the win. I think there will be goals, and I'm going. I'm friends with both coaches. How do you do this? So I was like, no,
you don't have to. It's all right.
Yeah, I'm gonna go 3-2 Weston.
There we go. A close one indeed. Next up, we've got Yoogali against Wagga City Wanderers. as we build here on the show, the Riverina Derby. Michael, so it's Sunday, June 20th, 2 p.m, Solomad Stadium. Michael went with Yoogali for this one. I'm going to go with Yoogali as well. It's going to be closer than people think. Wagga have done really well to fight back, but Yoogali, especially at home, especially when they play on Sundays, they seem to have a full squad. Everyone's there. And also one thing is whenever Yoogali lose, they always come back so much stronger the next game. They're one of those teams that reacts very well to a loss. So I'm expecting them to do that, but it'll be closer than people think because Wagga have really started to pick up momentum. So credit to Dave Leonard there and the crew over at Wagga.
Yeah, and I think that, as you say, it's a derby, and, whether or not Yoogali has sort of gotten nosed in front at the moment or Wagga have, struggled a little bit. That actually goes out the window a little bit when you're playing against your mates. And, I think it's going to be a tough one. I think Wagga will come out wanting to prove a point. I think probably Yoogali maybe just at the moment have that little bit of quality that might sort of save them home. But, I think Wagga will come out and want to take the points from this one because I think that, again, these next few games are about momentum and going into some games against either tougher teams or the teams below you. I think if you can actually get that win and get a little bit of momentum, I think that's going to, it's going to be a game changer over these next few games. Because if not, it's going to be a long 12 games for somebody. So,
Paul, thank you very much for joining me today. I look forward to having you back on the show in a couple of weeks and enjoy the Euros. I'm sure you like the rest of us with these sleepless nights ahead.
Yeah, I saw that little sneaky little Italian top that you're wearing there.
It's they're unfortunately not wearing the Renaissance kits. Like, have you seen their Renaissance kits?
I haven't.
They're not wearing them this Euros. They're wearing the horrible new Puma logo, Puma generic tops. Even Switzerland, I saw them play. They had another very bad average top. So these were the jerseys I had before then. So I don't think Italy are going to win though. I'm going to go with France, but I think they're my pick.
That's a whole other topic for a podcast, isn't it?
It is. It is. Listen to Jeremy. Jeremy's going to start doing his French football podcast. Is going to start doing it on the Euros. So start listening to that. But before you go, who do you reckon will win the Euros? I know it's early.
I think France are going to be up there. I think Belgium can't write off because I think they're an absolute quality team. But I do genuinely think that, given the distinct advantage England seem to have at this moment in time, to win it, they only have to play one away game. In reality, if they're not going to make a push for this one, then I don't think I'm going to see it in my lifetime. So.
Let's not forget there's only one more year before the next one. All right. Thank you very much, Paul. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. That was episode 32 of the Canberra Football Show, and we'll see you next week and try and get some sleep over the next week and 2 or 3 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you.